Did you know that there are 1.2 million puppies born every day in the world? No, neither did I. Anyway, I want to show you how to make another one. And we're going to be using some really cool tools in Illustrator. And of course, once you've done this one, you'll be able to do all sorts of different puppies and cats and, well, any other flat characters as well. Let's get started right away. In order to make our little dog like this, we're going to start with a new document. So I'm going to go to File, New. I'm going to go across to Web, and I'm just going to choose one of these options here. I'm going to choose the 1920 by 1080 pixels. Now I want this to go to social media, and particularly I want it to go to Instagram. So I'm going to change the size, the width in here to 1080 as well. So it's going to be 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. And I'm going to click on Create. Now we're going to start off by finding all the colors that we need. So I'm going to go to the window menu. I'm going down to my swatches over here. Here are my swatches, and this shows all the colors that I've got that I can use. Now you can either view the swatches like this, or as single rows like that, or as lots of little squares. And we're going to be using some of these brown colors in here. So if yours doesn't look quite the same as mine, just click on those buttons until it does. Now let's start off by making the feet and the legs of the dog. And we're going to use a simple shape. We're going to use a little rectangle. And I'm going to click and drag to make a rectangle at the bottom. This is going to be for his back feet. And I'm then going to go to these little dots over here, and I'm just going to pull slightly on the dots, and you can see how that rounds off the corners over there. So I'm going to have rounded corners for his feet. Now if you've made it the wrong size, just go back to the black arrow tool, and you can grab the top and move it up and down until you get it to what you feel is the right size. I also want to make it brown, so I'm going to start off with a fairly dark brown over here for the feet. Now let's make another one for the legs, the back legs. So same again, I will use the exact same tool, that little rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag another rectangle in here. Now you can see my rectangles are not quite in the right position over there. So if you use the black arrow tool, click and drag to select them both, you can then go to this little align option and click the center align. It's called horizontal align center. Click that and it will align them both up perfectly. And lastly, I'm going to click on this square, go to that corner and just pull it in to round off the corners. You can see that overlap, so you won't actually see that bottom one in there. Now these have both got a stroke, a line color around the outside. If we select them both and then go along here, you've got the fill color and the stroke color. And you could do exactly the same thing over here in the appearance. Click on the stroke itself, so it's on this little one here. That brings it to the front, and choose none. That's the white square with a red line through it. And that will just remove the stroke from around the side. So there we go, we've got the back legs done. Have a bit of a go with that, and I'll take you into the next area. Anytime if you look at your shape and you think I need to change it, you can click on these individual shapes, because I think the back leg should be a little bit taller, and you can drag them up like so. Let's make the body, and the body is going to be an elliptical shape. So I'll go to the ellipse tool. I'm going to draw in an elliptical shape over here. Now it doesn't really matter about the color, but what I want to do is I want to put the ellipse down here over the bottom of the dog. Let's make it a little bit taller. Oops. If you make a mistake, just use Control Z on a PC or Command Z on a Mac. We'll just pull that up a little bit like so. I'm going to pull it down to there. Now, the first thing that we need to do for the body is to get rid of this bit at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool which allows us to cut shapes up or add them together. I'm going to go and first of all find another shape. So let's just do this on the side here. So we'll move that over to the side. I'm going to make a little rectangle and put the rectangle over the bottom of that there. Use the black arrow tool, that's the tool right at the top, to click and drag to select both those shapes. So I've clicked and dragged, so I've touched both those shapes. You can see as I click and drag, it's touched both of those over there. And then we go down and we find this little tool here. This is called the Shape Builder tool. And it's kind of like a little arrow with two shapes behind it. All I need to do now, you can see there's a plus on it, is to move onto this shape here. Hold down the Alt or the Option key. It's Option on a Mac and Alt on a PC. And you see the plus turns to a minus. Now, if I click and drag over those two, it will just subtract them from my shape. So then that's going to be the body of the dog over there. But I still want to make this a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to do another shape. I'm going to put this shape over the top of that one. Over there, line it up roughly. I'm going to select both of them, so use the black selection tool and click and drag to select both. And then I'm going to go along to the Shape Builder tool, hold down the Alt key and subtract that bit and that bit. Now what I've actually got here are two shapes. There's this shape here. Oops. If you do that and it goes a bit weird, just double click to get out of what's called isolation mode. You've got this shape here and you've got that shape there. So this shape, I'm going to make a lighter brown, and I'm going to move both of those back on top of the dog. Now these are actually the legs. This back one here is the legs, so let's make them a lighter still like that. Lastly, we want to put on some paws down here, so I'm going to use a little rectangle. Draw in a small rectangle, use the same color as the legs. I'm going to zoom in for this, so it's either on a Mac it's Command and plus, on a PC it's Control and plus to zoom in. And you can see here I can just grab a corner and round that off, and then I'm going to pop that over there as his front foot. We might make it go down just a little bit like that. To make a copy for the other side, hold down the Alt or the Option key and drag that across over to there and pop that on the other side like so. You might need to move it around. It might actually even look better where it just overlaps a little bit like that over there. Command or Control minus to zoom out again. That gives us the basic body for the dog. Anyway, have a go with that. If you are absolutely new to Illustrator, run through this example 2 or 3 times until you get what to do, or just go through halfway through the video, stop, try it out a bit more, stop, try it out. Anyway, have a go with that. Let's make the head. I'm going to actually go over here to the left. I'm going to go down to the polygon tool. And I'm going to just click once over here, and that brings up the polygon options, and I can then change the number of sides to 3. If I click OK, you'll see I've got this little triangular shape. Now that's going to be the basis of the head, so I'm going to go back to the black arrow tool at the top. I'm going to make it bigger over there. It's the wrong way around. I want it to be, actually I want the pointy bit at the bottom. So if you have a look at your properties, you'll find there's an option here to flip things. I can just flip it that way around. Then I will grab this little dot over here like we did with those squares and just drag that in. That'll round off all of those corners like that. If you want to make it bigger, grab a corner and you can size it up. I think I'd like a nice head like that. Big one over there. I think that's working quite well. Now, what about the ears? Well, the ears, I'm going to use an ellipse. So I'm just going to draw in a little elliptical shape here. I'm going to get another shape, click and drag that over the top of it, use the black arrow tool to click and drag to select both. And then down here, as we did before, I will use the Shape Builder tool, hold down the Alt or the Option key and click and drag across them to get rid of the other bit that I don't want. Now you can see there aren't any dots in there to round them off, but if you go to the white arrow tool, now there are some dots, and I can just pull them in to round off the ears. Now we're going to have one ear over here like that. Let's change the color and make it a bit, well, I think we'll make that quite dark over there. And then I'm going to make the size correct. I'll just pull it out a little bit. Then I'm going to hold down the Alt or the Option key. I'm still on the black arrow tool, by the way. Hold down the Alt or the Option key and just drag a copy of that out. This one's going to be at an angle, so I'll move just off the edge over there. Click and drag to get that sort of nice little puppy ear type of look going on there. Try that out. I'm going to take a little ellipse and I'm going to draw in the tongue over here. I know it doesn't look much like a tongue yet. I'm going to make that pink. I'm going to take an ellipse and I'm going to make a perfect ellipse, or perfect circle. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I do that. So there's one side. Let's give that a color over here. And I'm going to use the black arrow tool to move it into the right place. I'm then going to hold down the Alt or the Option key and make a copy of that. And then we're going to take another ellipse over here and just draw in another shape, which is going to be for the nose. Let's make the nose black like that. And you can change the colors if they're not light or dark enough. Just go in and adjust the colors in there. Once again, have a go with the nose and the mouth. I've made a little white ellipse. I've done it out here so that you could see it, and I've filled it with white. And I'm going to pop that on top of his nose to give him a shiny nose in there. I think that's looking quite good. And for the eye, I made a white circle, then a smaller black circle, and then a very small white circle. And I've just moved them and put them all together, and that gives me the eye. And then once again, I can make a copy of those and place it on that side over there. I think that's in the right place. Let's just move it along a little bit. You can place these wherever you want. So really simple on that one. Have a go and make your puppy some eyes. Now the tail. I've made a big circle here, and I'm going to hold down the Alt or the Option key to make another circle over there. You can see they are just about or very, very close together. I'm going to select them both and then use this little tool here. Remember, tool for cutting things out? Well, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click and drag to subtract that, and I'm going to move this over to the puppy. Now, lastly, I want to move this behind the puppy, so I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, and say Send to the back. And because it's selected, it will send it right the way back behind the puppy. Try that out. Now, to give our puppy a bit of shading, I'm going to take a rectangle and put a rectangle over half the puppy. I'm going to make the rectangle black. Now, what we do is we use the black arrow tool, and you click and you drag and you select everything in your scene. And now use that same little shape builder tool, hold down the Alt key and click on the area that's not on the puppy. And what that'll do is it'll subtract everything else. Now we've actually got a black shape over there, you can see, which is the shape of the puppy. We go across to the appearance, down to opacity, and we reduce the opacity all the way down until you just have a slightly darker area on one side of your dog. To export our puppy, we're going to go to File. We're going to say Export, Export As. We're going to be exporting this as either a JPEG or a PNG file for the web. Give it a name. Use your artboard, click on Export, and then OK that. And that's it. It's done. Your puppy's now ready to be used for the web. Now we're going to make another version of this dog with more shading on it, and a lot more accurate shading, like bits under the ear over there, maybe under its jowls over here. We need to darken them down rather than just half of the illustration being shaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on a copy. Now I'm going to go down, I'm going to find this little tool called the artboard tool, and I'm going to make a copy of this artboard with the artwork on it. Now it is important that when you do that, in your properties you have move artwork with artboard switched on. Otherwise when you copy it, it'll only copy the artboard, not the dog as well. So I'm going to hold down, now it's the Option key on the Mac or the Alt key on the PC, and just click and drag a copy of that artboard over there. So you can see I've now got a second artboard in here. To get out of the artboard, we just change back to one of the other tools like that. I'm also going to move the overlay on here out the way. We can bring it back later on if we wish. Now let's draw in some lines where we want the shadow, and I'm going to start off over here by his ear. I'm going to go along and I'm going to use the pencil tool. Now the pencil tool has got some options to make it smoother or more accurate, and I want it to be smooth. So I'm going to double click on the pencil over there, and I'm going to make sure that my fidelity, this little slider over here, is set to smooth in there. And then I'm going to click OK. So now the pencil will do a lot smoother and smooth out my lines for me. And I'm now going to draw in the area that I want, but I'm just going to change this. So instead of having a fill, I'm going to have no fill and no stroke. Now I'm going to just stop there for a second because I've made a bit of a mistake here. I actually had this selected when I did it, so I'm going to use Command or Control Z to undo that. Just make sure that when you do that and you're changing colors, you don't have anything selected. Silly mistake, but we all make them from time to time. And as long as you identify what the problem is, it's easy to fix. So let me go to the pencil. I don't want any fill, so I'm going to choose none for the fill and none for the stroke. So this will make an invisible line. And I'm going to draw it in. So I'm going to start over here and just, you can see my line's a little bit wonky. Draw that in over there, and you can see how it smooths out really, really nicely. Okay, that one's looking great. Let's do another one over here. So I'm just going to draw in another little line. Might be a bit wonky, but that's absolutely fine over there. By the way, that one's still there. It's just invisible in there. Let's have another line which is going to kind of go down over here for that leg. Once again, it's a little bit wonky. Smoothed out perfectly for a straight line. And I'm thinking that I want to actually put either a shadow or a collar around there. So I don't think that will actually work as a collar because that's a little bit on the large side. So let me undo that. Command or Control Z. And I'm going to do it a little bit tighter over here so we'll have the collar coming through there. And even if it's not in the right place, I can always use the black arrow tool, grab it and move it around over there. Now, if you happen to move something, you think, oh my goodness, what have I done with it? Where do I get it back? What you can do is you can go to the View menu and you can show Outline Mode. And Outline Mode shows all of your lines. So I can just take this and move it back into the right area and then go to View Preview Mode. I still want a bit of a shadow from his tongue, so I'm actually going to go in here with my pencil and just draw in a little shadow, maybe something like that over there, and maybe it goes up to that point over there. So we've put in a lot of different little lines in here. Have a bit of a go with that, and don't forget View Outline Mode and then View Preview Mode to work between those two views. Try it out. Okay, so let's do the magic part. I'm going to use my black arrow tool and I'm going to click and drag to select the entire dog. And you can see it's selected those lines there, these ones here, all of the lines in there. We're going to go to the Object menu now, and I'm going down to something called Live Paint. And we're going to make this into a Live Paint object. So I'll just go up to Make over there. This just says that complex visual appearances may be lost when we convert to a live paint group. I'll just click OK. We don't have any of them in the dog at the moment because we've moved the transparent overlay above it. So this almost looks like a group. If I click on it, you can see it selects everything in there. So it's kind of like a grouped object, but I'm going to deselect it and I'm going to go down. I'm going to find the tool which will allow me to paint on the live paint area. And it's a little paint bucket that we're looking for. Now, looking at my tools over here, I can't see any little paint bucket at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the window menu. I'm going to go along to the toolbars, and I'm on the basic toolbar at the moment. I'm going to choose the advanced toolbar. Now in here you'll find that there is a little paint bucket, and it's in with your shape builder tool. We've got a live paint bucket over there. So let me go and pick a color. So what I want to do is I want to make his head a little bit darker than the brown that it is at the moment. So let me just choose a medium brown. And as I move over the dog, you can see it shows me all of those little areas. So if I move over to that area then click, I can then fill that area with color. It's such a lovely way of working. Let's get a dark brown, go down here, click on that bit, click on that bit. Oh, there's a little bit at the bottom as well. We'll click over there. I think we need a sort of a medium brown for the shadow here. So I'll go over here and click, click. Sometimes it's broken up into quite a few different pieces depending on what you've actually done over there. So we've got that little shadow. Now that shadow is probably a little bit too dark. Let's just take a slightly lighter one, and what you'll find is you can actually, as I'm doing, just click and drag over the area that you want to change. Now I want a color over here. Remember, I put in that little line over there, so I can go and choose the color for my collar. I'm going to choose a bit of a blue over there, and then I can start clicking there. Obviously we don't want to do his tongue. I want to do that bit, that little bit there, and that bit over there, and then we've got the collar on there. And then if I wanted to go in and do his the shadow, I can click over, let's get a darker brown. I can click over here for the shadow, and we obviously want a shadow on the blue collar as well. So maybe I'll take a darker blue in there. Now if I don't have a darker blue, I can go to my color here and just choose a slightly darker blue from what I had. Click in there to get the shadow. It's such a beautiful way of working. Once you're happy with that, you can then take your shape and just pop it over the top. But look at this, it's now behind the dog. When we made that into a live paint object, it brought it to the front. I'm going to have to go along to the object menu, arrange, and bring my shadow to the front, and then I can move it back on top of the dog like so. We've got all the shadows in there. If you find that you can't get into the right position, what I do is I use the little arrows on the keyboard, and you can move things around. If you hold down Shift and use the arrows, it will move in larger increments. So have a look at the difference between those two. That's quite flat. This has got a few more little shadows in there. Feel free to put in as many shadows as you like, but have fun with that, and then we'll look at doing the background next. Let's make a little bone pattern for the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do this with squares and circles. So I'm going to take a little rectangle, and I'm going to draw in the bone. Now the color doesn't matter. So that's the sort of the middle of the bone, and then obviously I want the two joints on the end. So I'm going to use a little ellipse. You can do any shape you like. I'm going to zoom in, by the way, with either Control plus or Command plus, depending on your PC or Mac. I'm going to go along and I'm going to get the elliptical tool, and I want to draw a little circle over here. So I'm holding down the Shift key to get a perfect circle, something like that. And I'm going to place that one Now you'll see as I move it across, it'll just snap onto that corner there, over there. Then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and make a copy to go on the other side. So let's move that one across to there. Once again, I'll hold it over there and snap it into the right position. And then I can do two at a time. So I can select both of those, hold down the Alt or the Option key and drag a copy down to there. Let's take all of those, and I'm going to use the tool we looked at earlier, which is the Shape Builder tool, and I'll just drag over those bits to unite them all into one. I'm not holding down the Alt key at all, it's just making them into one shape. And then I can give it a color. I think something like a very pale yellow might work for that. So I'll just go back to my black arrow tool, onto my yellow in there, and then with the color, if you can't see this color panel, by the way, it's in the window menu, I'm just going to pull that all the way up to make it a very pale yellow, maybe ever so slightly darker, something along that line. We don't want it to look so over the top that we don't notice the puppy, so it's going to be very, very subtle in the background. Anyway, if you'd like to make the bone, have a bit of a go with that now, and then we'll put it into a pattern. So how do we get this into a pattern? Well, this, if you've never done it before, you won't believe how easy it is. All I do is take the bone and drag and drop it into my swatch, and that's made the pattern. There's the pattern there. Now, I could delete this, or I could just remove it and move it out over to the side. I'm going to take a rectangle, draw in a rectangle over there, and then I'm going to click on that to see the pattern. Now, as you can see, it looks awful. It doesn't look like the sort of interesting pattern that I'd had in mind. It looks more like a chain fence, to be honest. So how can we change that? Well, all you do is on your pattern, if you double click the pattern over there in the swatches, it opens up the pattern editor. Now the pattern editor has got some pattern options here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this from a grid into brick by row, and that offsets them. You'll see we've got brick by column to offset them that way, or we've got hexes which offsets them both ways. I'm going to choose brick by row over there. And then if you go up to this little button at the top here and click on that one under the word pattern, you can see how it allows me to actually adjust the shape. And this is the size that the pattern repeats on. So if I pull this out, you can see how we can get those to go either further apart or really close together, like so. I'm going to take it so they're slightly further apart, like that. Now, once you're happy with this, you can actually then go along and just say done at the top. And it'll update any pattern that you've got there already. Have a go with that, and I'll show you how you can scale the pattern and rotate it in here as well. I'm going to select the square that's got my pattern in on my background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along and I'm going to look at this little tool over here. This is the scaling tool. Now, if you can't see it, it's actually with the shear and the reshape tool. Remember, if you can't see all of these tools, it's the window menu and go along to your advanced tools in there. And with this selected, I'm going to double click on that tool over here. So it allows me to actually scale things down. Now, let's say that I wanted those bones to be about 60% of the size. So I put in 60 in here. If I were to click OK, it scales the whole thing down, including the square that it was in. Let's undo that. So what we need to do is I'm going to put in 60% in there. We only want to, in the options, transform the pattern, not the object. So if you switch off the object, it now just does the pattern for you, and you can click OK. And it's the same with rotation. Once again, I've made sure that I've selected this area here. I'm going to go along to my rotate tool over there, double click it. I want to rotate this to 45 degrees or thereabouts. Okay, 46 will do. I don't want to rotate the object. If that was on, you'll see the object rotates as well. Just the pattern. Click OK, and it's done. And now I'm going to go along to my object, arrange, and send that to the back. If you wish, you can still select that and then go to your opacity and maybe change the opacity if you want something a lot lighter. By all means, take a little shape, pop a shape in there as well. So we can have another shape over there, give that a bit of a color, and send that to the back if you want a background in there too. I'll go to arrange, send to the back, so we can have things like that. But anyway, have a go, get that far, and then I'll take you through one last little item in here at the end of this project. I'm going to get rid of that orange because I don't like it, so there we go. Try it out. I'm going to put in some text, and I'm going to put in the word puppy clinic. So I'm going to move over to the side and just do it over here. I'm going to click to get some text in there rather than clicking and dragging a little box. And I'm going to put in puppy clinic. I'm going to select all my text over here, and it's very, very, very small. So maybe before I do that, I better scale it. The great thing about using this sort of just click method is you can then go along to your black arrow tool, grab a corner and start to scale it. But do hold down the shift key when you're scaling that. So I'm going to have the word puppy being quite big and the word clinic being a lot smaller. So even though I've scaled it up, I can still go along to my character panel and I can actually change the type size or the font size of the word clinic and move that down there. Now, of course, when you're here, I won't go through all of it, but have a little bit of a look, find an interesting typeface that will work for your puppy. I'm going to go with that one over there. It looks very upmarket and Vogue-like. And get your text in. Don't forget to choose a color which is sympathetic to what you've got in here. Now, although we've got a puppy of a certain color, I kind of like the blue that's in his collar. So maybe I'll actually use the blue over there for my puppy clinic text. I'm going to move it across over there and just rotate it. So I move to the corner, hold down the shift key, and that will allow me to rotate it in 45-degree increments, and I can pop that over there. I'll just scale that down a little bit over there so it says puppy clinic next to him. Have a bit of a go with that. As you can see, I've made a few changes here. I have moved my puppy along, I've moved that up a bit, I've actually changed the color of the word clinic, and I put some more text in here. By the way, when you want to move your puppy around, I would click and drag so you're selecting both the puppy and the shadow over the top. Now, of course, that also selects the bones in the background. So what you can then do is hold down the shift key and just deselect the bones, and you can then move the puppy with the shadow around quite easily. Now we've got that, let's take this and save it out for Instagram or whatever social media platform you want to put it on. Now, first of all, we should have done a save as we go along. I'm just saving mine onto the cloud, but if you want to save yours onto your computer, that's fine too. And I'll just give it a name, click on save. Now, I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to choose Export, but I'm going to say Export for Screens. So what this does is it says which of these two artboards would you like to export? Well, I don't want to export the first one. I just want the second one. So I'll untick that over there. And then on this side here, we've got where we're exporting it to. I'm going to put it onto my desktop. You can put it wherever you want. And down here, I can then choose the format and the size and scale. You'll see there's some little settings over here. If I click in there, I've got different presets. I can use iOS or Android and use those presets. Or you can do your own. So I'm going to do one for JPEG. I'll keep my JPEG quality really high to 100% over here. And the scale, I will just have a 1:1 scale. So it will be the 1080 that I designed it at. However, if you thought, okay, that's great, I want that, but I also want to print a large poster for this, maybe 1080 pixels is not enough and you actually want it to be, 4000 pixels, what you can do is you can just add a second one in there. And over here, I can then just say, well, this one is for printing. I'll keep it on a JPEG. But over here, instead of ×2, I'm going to go to my width and I'm going to say, I want this to be 100 pixels is really small, 4000 pixels. You can add as many of these in as you like. Once you're happy with that, click to export the artboard. So there we have it. We've got a low resolution one ready for social media and a high resolution one over here ready for printing. Don't forget to check out my other Adobe courses. I also have courses in Affinity, Canva, and Procreate.